Hello and welcome to another video here at Movie Mash, and today I want to talk about Richard Donner, who passed away this week. And the reason why I want to do this video is I want to talk about and do some kind of tribute to the late director who made a big impact to me in my life. I feel like that he was probably the first director I ever knew. I didn't, as a kid growing up watching Superman repeatedly, those big blue titles coming up on the screen, learning what Christopher Reeve was and all stuff like that. As I started getting older, I was wondering, well, what does the director mean? What does the producer mean? Like all these big blue titles coming at me. So I started learning more and more, and then I started learning like who was what and what a director was, and I started looking into who this Richard Donner was, and I realized how hard he worked and what he put into making this film, and I thought it fascinating. Obviously, we all know Christopher Reeve was a big influence, and he made Superman the way it is. But we could say Richard Donner took a serious approach to the movie, and this is where I started learning about who he was and what he went through to make it. And I started getting really into movies and editing and directing and all sorts of every aspect of movies. And it started with Superman, and it started with my interest in Richard Donner. Now, I just don't want to talk about Superman and Richard Donner just in that category. I want to talk about everything and most things he's done and a little bit about his life. So let's just take a quick look and let me have a little talk about what he's done and who he is. Richard Donner was born in 1930 on April the 24th in Bronx, New York. And he was born to Russian Jewish parents. As he was growing up in the Bronx in New York, his granddad had owned a small little cinema where he spent a lot of time growing up, and he learned all about chopping reels, editing, and projections. Obviously, he got to see all the latest movies where were out at the time, and it left a big impression on him. Now, it wasn't his first idea to be a director. He wanted to be a movie star after watching all the big stars on the screen. But that didn't work out just then. He carried on with school, and as he graduated from school, he joined the Navy for a while. But this bug in him wanted to be an actor so much, he left the Navy to be an actor and went off to Hollywood to search for the parts that was made for him. He ended up getting small parts here and there, nothing major, but he came across a director called Martin Ritt. Martin Ritt realized that he had quite a good knowledge of cameras and rolls and editing and where positions should, and he encouraged him to start being a director. So he encouraged him to be a director, and he gave him the assistant directing job on many commercials. Doing these commercials ended up leading him to make TV shows, and he started making TV shows with Steve McQueen in Wanted Dead or Alive, Gilligan's Island, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Fugitive, Wild Wild West, but most famously, he ended up doing a Twilight Zone episode, and it's probably one of the most famous episodes of all time. It was called Nightmare at 200,000 Feet with William Shatner. Now, for those who haven't seen it, go and check it out. It's probably one of William Shatner's first ever things too. It's in black and white. It's about a man on an aeroplane, and he looks out the window and he can see an alien destroying the ship, and no one believes him. It's a great episode. Check it out. I think it's been remade since, but always the original's better. Donner's first movie was called X-15 with Charles Bronson, the late and great Charles Bronson, and that was in 1961. But it was a few years later he started doing a film called Salt and Pepper with another late Sammy Davis Jr. But it was the next movie. It was called The Omen in 1976. It's when we all start to know who Richard Donner was. The Omen is probably one of the most scariest movies ever made. I watched it about a year ago, and it still really holds up. I reckon it's in my top 10 of horrors of all time. There's something eerie about it. It gives you goosebumps. There's something wrong about it, and it's all down to the way he directed it. Now, we did have Gregory Peck and Lee Remick, on the movie, and he got quite a lot out of them. Apparently, he got the best out of them. And there's a documentary about everything that went wrong and the curse of the film. But as I said, it's a really good horror, and if you haven't seen it, you should go and check it out. And on a side note, there's a scene, spoiler if you haven't seen it, but it's 1976, you should have. there's a scene on the film where the mum gets thrown out the window by the nanny, yeah, and that's in a hospital. Well, that hospital is my local hospital. I'm literally 2 miles from it, and my son was born there, and I kind of every time I go in there, that kind of scary music starts playing on my head. I just want to go home. I'm like, you know what? I'm not that sick. The Omen did really well box office around the world, and also all critics around the world praised the movie. But it was this movie that and Richard Donner was caught the attention of the Salkinds. The Salkinds was father and son, and they wanted to make a big, massive, epic movie. And as we all know, this was Superman. As the production went on, there was a lot of problems between both the Salkinds and Richard Donner. You see, the Salkinds wanted as big as the movie is, they wanted it to be more like the 1960s Batman, kind of like spoof, kind of not quite spoof, but kind of silly and playful for kids. But Richard Donner, he wanted to play this movie as straight as possible, as straight as you could make a man in tights. And he brought Christopher Reeve. He's the one who cast Christopher Reeve, and he made it as straight as he possible could. And but the problem was is he started falling out with the Salkinds because budgets started going over, and it took ages to make, and it was just costing a lot. And on the second movie, they got rid of Richard Donner, which was a big kick in the arse. And he had filmed probably, I think, 75% of Superman 2. He was one of the main reasons why Superman did really well. He wanted to do this full on, straight and serious you can, and it was a massive success. It blew the minds of everyone. The special effects had never been done. I mean, it was impossible to make a man fly, and he was relentless until he found a way to do it and found a production team that could help, and he got it done. I love that movie, but I could talk about. I'm actually going to do a finisher review on it soon. After the success of Superman, Donner went on to make a film called The Toy with Richard Pryor in 1982. It did okay, but it wasn't for another 2-3 years later in 1985 when he hit the big time again with a little film we all might know called The Goonies. Like Superman, The Goonies is one of my favourite childhood movies, along with millions and millions of people that was brought up in the 80s. And it has so much charm. Again, he wanted to try and make this as straight as possible, like Superman. Yeah, it's about kids going on an adventure, as we all know, but he tried to do it as serious as he could, and the film is amazing. It still holds up. It's the practical effects, everything. It's fantastic. Another classic. I mean, can the guy do wrong? I don't think so. The same year, 1985, he made another little film called Ladyhawke. Now, Ladyhawke I actually really like it. I think it's an underrated movie, very 80s, but it didn't do as good as everything else. But for him, he met his future wife, Lauren, and they were together since up until he died. In 1987, he had another big, massive success, Lethal Weapon, with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. And in the meantime, he was actually asked to direct Lost Boys, which I wonder what that would have been like, but I'm not going to tarnish that film. It's perfect the way it is. But he ended up being a producer on that, and a lot of people don't know that, but he produced that film. Then in 1988, he made a classic Christmas movie, and it's one of my favourites with Bill Murray called Scrooged. Yeah, if you haven't seen that, I mean, surely I don't know where you've been. It's on every Christmas. It's based on The Christmas Carol, but it's a funny take, and we got the great Bill Murray playing Scrooge. I mean, you can't go wrong, and it is fucking brilliant. Now, here's a little bit of trivia for you. In 1989, Lethal Weapon 2 started coming out, and he was offered to make the Batman movie, the one that Tim Burton ended up making in 1989, and he was to direct it, but with Mel Gibson as Batman. Now, I don't know how many people know that, but I just want people to comment below and let me know, what do you think of Mel Gibson playing Batman? I mean, he must have been in his 30s around then. So just want to know in the comments below, what would you have thought of Mel Gibson being Batman? I'm not sure. I like Mel Gibson though. In the same year, 1989, another film came out called Radio Flyer, starring a very young Elijah Wood. I actually really liked this movie. It didn't do so well, and probably a lot of people haven't heard it, but it's actually a really nice movie, and I recommend that as well, so go and check that out. Then in 1992, we got Lethal Weapon 3, and then we got Maverick in 1994 with Mel Gibson again. He seems to like Mel Gibson. Maverick is actually a great movie. It's a lot of fun, and it's well directed, along with Lethal Weapon 3. I mean, he's a good director. I keep saying that, but he really is. In 1997, he did another movie with Mel Gibson called Conspiracy Theory with Julia Roberts as well. And was it Patrick Stewart? And it's actually a decent movie. These films, I actually think I should rewatch them all. They're actually really good movies. And if you haven't seen that, that's another gem. In 2003, he made a film called Timeline with Gerard Butler and Paul Walker. And it didn't do so well, and critically didn't do great. I suppose you can't have all the winners, but I actually think it's decent enough, and it's worth a good watch. But in 2006, he made his final film, which was 16 Blocks with Bruce Willis. After that, he felt like it was time that he kind of slowed down. He did a lot of producing. He did loads of producing in between, but it was time for him to slow down. He was tired. He felt he was a bit old. But the sad part is that there's a new Lethal Weapon 5 to be made. It was being made, and he was set to direct, even at the age of 91. And I'd love to see the gang back together one more time. And who knows what will happen now? Will they carry on? But I hope they don't, because it felt like he was part of the team, even though you don't see him at the other side of the camera. But let's see. Richard Donner was a good director, but apparently he made different kind of movies. It wasn't all the same genre, and he was successful in all kinds. He did superhero, he did action, he did comedy, he did adventure, he did horror. He did it all, and he succeeded with all of it. Not only that, but apparently he was a super nice guy in real life and a decent gentleman. And he actually became close friends with Mel Gibson, which is on all these movies, and Danny Glover. And one of his close friends was Steven Spielberg. And I was reading tweets, what they were saying. Mel Gibson said that it's not just someone he's lost, someone a mentor. He goes that he was actually my friend. And Danny Glover tweeted something like, he said that he was not just my friend, but he was my friend, my family's friend as well. And Steven Spielberg said he was the biggest Goonie of them all. And it was very nice. It was a nice little send-off for him. Richard Donner proved to be one of the greatest directors of all time. His legacy will live on, even though he's passed away. He won't be forgotten. And we'll see his stamp on every time we watch a movie from him, like Superman and the Goonies. I personally want to say that, Richard, you truly made me believe a man could fly. Just before we go, I wanted to leave you with this tribute and have a quick look at some of the movies that he's made over the years. But for now, and until next time, see ya.
Luckiest person in the world. This business has been incredible. I've had nothing but friends in every movie you make. The one good thing about it is you come out with a new friend. And it's so true. But I came out with so many of them. It's extraordinary. This industry is my friend. And it's been just the greatest gift in the world to me.